Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Gavin Preston. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Pete. So good for you to have me on your show. Thank you.
Well, vice versa. It's lovely to have you. So tell us, Gavin, who are you? What do you do? And where are you from?
So I'm a business strategist. I help businesses to scale and grow. I work with SMEs, particularly a sweet spot between those that are turning over between 1 million and 5 million. And I'm brought in when they're in a turnaround situation, when they're in a bit of survival situation to help them, survive. And then go on to thrive, or I help businesses where they've been plateauing. So they've had growth, they've hit a plateau, and I'm brought in to help them sort of get into that next phase of growth. I live on the North Wales coast in a place called Dagamwi, so across the water from Conway. And but initially born and bred in Lancaster in the northwest of England, but I spent most of my life growing up in the English Lake District in Windermere.
Oh, wow. So all very beautiful parts of the country.
Yeah, I like places of any sort of outstanding natural beauty, and so I moved basically from the beauty of Lake Windermere to the stunning North Wales coast. So yes.
Oh, lovely. So it sounds, well, I'm sure we'll get into it, all the working with those SMEs. And would you describe yourself a bit of a firefighter then, or you're a bit of a fire consultant when things are...
Yeah, I can be a firefighter, but also I reignite the fire. So I've had people that have come to me and said, "Look, I've lost my mojo. I want to do something with my business. I want 5 years now to build it, to sell it. I've lost my mojo, and I want you to sort of relight the pilot light on the boiler or whatever, get the fire in the belly." Literally, that is some of the language that they use with me. I need that fire back in my belly that I had when I set up my business, and so I reignite that, but I reignite that passion and shine the torch of brilliance on them to say this is the art of what is possible. But then I underpin it with, here are the strategic and operational pieces that you need in your business to grow it, scale it, but in a sustainable and a profitable way.
Wow, I love it. So give us the headlines here. So you are now an author?
Now an author, yeah. Survive and Thrive, How to Secure, Scale and Succeed in Business. Super excited about the book launch, and it's been a long time in the coming, and I think we'll probably get into it, but the book that's publishing now is so much better for the journey I've been on than the book that was originally started to be written. And because of life and business experiences that I've been through, that's given me a lot more depth and substance to what I'm sharing. So I think if I look back in the past, it was all great mindset. Let's go for growth, and this is how you grow your business. Great, and let's do this. Go for it. And what I'm really careful to do now is, whilst balancing that out with, these are things you need to get right operationally, structurally in your business in order to grow it sustainably and profitably. So I'm going to inspire you, but I'm going to back it up with solid foundations. And then I'm going to work with your team and again, back that up with solid foundations. So the substance is down to earth, it's practical, but it's also inspirational and motivational.
It's I'm getting from your tone, your context there, it sounds like you're not the full blown here, just hit it with more energy. It's wiser words, as in you got to go here.
You see, the concepts in the book, the Thrive part is a 6-stage business growth model I call the strategy compass. And each of these 6 elements, and I'll run through them in a second, none of them are new. But what I have done is I pulled them together into one space, into one book. So you might get a book on strategy, but you'll get a book on mindset. You might get a book on systems and processes, but you won't get the things together. So I wanted to create a manual for business owners that were either in survival or were bored of plateauing, frustrated with plateauing, and say, here's a comprehensive guide. You do all of these things right and your business will grow. And by the way, I know, because I've used this process toe to toe with so many business owners over the years, that actually this is the stuff that works and delivers results.
No, it's great. And you've been there, you've done it, you're 25 odd years in business as such, right?
Yeah, it seems interesting that it's been the phrase 25 years has been coined quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I have. I started off my career with KPMG. I trained and qualified as a chartered accountant. That gave me really good grounding in business. And whilst my thing was never tax, or was never sort of making sure that your statutory accounts were perfect or your balance sheet is balanced, I just love the bigger picture piece, the piece where we could look at strategy, look at people within a business, see where the business was and where it could grow and how it could fit in within a marketplace. And that was the bit that I had the flair for, but I had the caliber of that quality of training and that way of thinking. And importantly, the exposure to so many businesses. So, starting to qualify with them at 21, there's been 25, 26 now years of experience where I've worked in businesses large and small, from multinational corporates, organizations like the United Nations, through to solopreneurs, and all in between, across different continents, across so many different industries, public sector, private sector, third sector. So if you, for that 25, 26 years, I've spent, certainly every month, I've been in several different new businesses every month for those 25, 26 years. And you're going to see patterns, you're going to learn stuff, you're going to spot stuff. And I've gone out and built on the skill set around finance and accountancy, and built a huge amount around mindset, NLP. I went deep with Paul McKenna, Richard Bandler, and their business partner in the UK, Michael Breen, about business applications of NLP. So I did the whole journey around that. Then I built skills around marketing, or knowledge around marketing, around strategy, and just experience around ops. So now I can go into a business and pretty much, unless it's like a lean manufacturing area, which I haven't got any experience in, but I can identify the levers that need to be pulled to either keep the boat afloat in terms of the business, or to be able to get it into growth again.
I look forward to it. I mean, we're going to get into this more, but first of all, let me just ask, what does fire in the belly mean to you?
It's that it's a drive. It's a personal drive to want to get me out of bed, to want me to do more, to want to push hard. It fuels the early mornings, the late nights. And look, I think I got it from my dad. I know how to work hard, and I certainly put the hours in. And it's the driver as to why. And actually, my coach pulled this out of me recently, and we would sort of, so why did you write the book, Gavin? Oh, because I got this knowledge. No, really. What was the moment? What was the spark? Survive and thrive. Why that? And what he pulled out of me, which you and I know the power of coaching, which was fascinating, was I grew up in survival. What I mean by that is my dad was a commission-only salesman. So what he earned in a week or a month was entirely dependent on whether he sold or not and how much he sold. So some weeks or months we would eat well and some we wouldn't. There was always uncertainty about, would the family go on holiday? Was there enough money for us to go on holiday? So I grew up in survival, and then he later went on to set up his own business, and he made a massive step. I remember it so vividly. He went from operating out of like 2 spare rooms in a small cottage to taking on a 9,800 square foot business center with storage space. And his vision was huge. He had to set up 4 different businesses, working 6 to 7 days a week, 14 to 16 hours a day to make ends meet. And I was in my early stages of my KPMG training, and I used to do his cash flow forecasting every other weekend. And I used to remember driving back down the motorway thinking, shit, I don't think my dad's going to be in business in 2 weeks' time when I come back. So I grew up with this uncertainty, this stress and worry around cash, or cash flow specifically. And then I set up my own business back in 2002, and I had some ups and downs on my own cash flow. And I think we teach what we most need to learn. I now look back, that's that Steve Jobs phrase, you can look backwards and then you can see the dots to join, or words to that effect, how the dots join up. And I wrote the book for people in business that put so much time, so much energy, sweat, blood and tears. They've got worries around cash flow, how they're going to meet payroll and pay suppliers. And then in addition to that, they're sacrificing time on their health, time with their partner, their spouse, and time with their children. And it always frustrated me when I saw business owners having that experience, and I really wanted to help them. And I think that's the fire in the belly for me, which is like, I want to help. When you read the brochure to set up your own business, or the imaginary brochure of what you fantasize running your own business would be like, you didn't expect you would have less certainty of income, you would work even more hours, you'd have less time with your family and your partner. And so many business owners I encounter are quite battle weary and punch drunk. And my passion and my fire in the belly is, I can help you and I want to help you. I want to help you get the success and the fulfillment from your business that you dreamt of when you first, opened the doors or you started on that business journey. But secondly, I want you to have a better relationship with your children. I want you to have more time with your children and your spouse. And another mentor of mine in the past said to me at one stage, it's always stood out in my mind, is, your wife or your spouse, your partner, and your children, they spell love Time. And so many business owners, myself included, my dad included, there wasn't much of that Time going on. And the book really is about, let's get these things right. And this is the driver for me. And so that you can get more time with the people that mean most to you. And I think I've always wanted to be authentically on the journey myself. So I spend too much time in my business at the expense of time with my boys. So I'm work in progress, and I believe in being really authentic about this. When I encounter something, I seem to have to go through a challenge. There's always a breakdown before a breakthrough, whether it's been a personal relationship thing, a marriage thing, a health thing, a business thing. I kind of go through it, and then I attract clients going through it, and I obviously am so much more authentically able to help them because I know it, I feel it, I've been through it, I know what it's like.
It is interesting because, early on you mentioned with Fire in the Belly, saying it's actually being prepared or be willing to do the early mornings, late nights, and then vice versa. It's getting the measure, getting the balance with family as well, and it's entrepreneurship, family life, and especially when you see people with passion, it's either you get super good at juggling or what, and I don't know how it's a balancing act, right?
It is a balancing act, and people talk about work-life balance, and I think it's a red herring of a concept. I think there's times where you're going to be really full on with your family in terms of giving them time, whether that be a holiday or a birthday or something like that. There'll be times when you've got a project or launching within your business, and that you're going to be full on into your business. And we should be able to find a way of integrating both work and life together, so it's our experience and our journey. And we all want to sit down in our rocking chair in our 80s and look back and go, do you know what? I'm proud of what I did, and I'm proud of the family I've raised, and I'm proud of the difference I've made in the lives of my customers. So I've now left a dent in the universe, a mark in the world. And I think too often it can be myopic in one area. So something that I've been incredibly busy on, say, the book project, for example, and a massive client project recently. My 7-year-old, my eldest, says, Daddy, all you're interested in is business and money. And, that hits hard.
Wow. Straight to the jugular.
Good lad. And say how it is, I love feedback, and I'm the first person that's happy to look in the mirror. And I know that I now need to make sure that certainly over August, I've been skewing the balance the other way. I've been working 12, 14-hour days, 6-7 days a week, and for too long now. So as I've been getting the book ready for launch, the audio book, and a massive client project, and so I now know I have to switch the balance back the other way and be really present. It's interesting when I'm with clients and when I'm coaching and working with them, my phone's off, and the only person in my world is the client. There's nobody else. So 100% of my bandwidth is dedicated to listening and watching the client, hearing and picking up what they're saying, importantly, what they're not saying, sensing what they're feeling, so that I can cut to the core of the core issues straight away. If I'm really honest and I look hard in the mirror, do I apply that level of attention to my boys? No, and I need to work on that.
That's a very honest thing to say. And it's always interesting too, because you're quite reflective about your father as well. And that times it seems to be a, as you say, a dot connection going on for you.
Yeah, but so here we talk about the yin and the yang, and the night and day, and the autumn and winter, or autumn, so summer and winter. We need those opposites in life to create the growth. So you mentioned just before we started to record about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich was made out of 504 interviews. It was the second book I read at the age of 15, so the second book in the area of personal development. When I was 15 and I was studying for my GCSEs, I was quite anxious about how well I was doing, and I felt quite overwhelmed by it. And I remember vividly, my dad came in and sat on the end of my bed, in the corner of my bed, and he handed me a book. He worked for, when he was a commission-only salesman, he worked for the UK arm of an American sales company. So a lot of their US sales training books and trainings came over. And he handed me a book called The Success System That Never Fails by W. Clement Stone. And W. Clement Stone was a big mate of Napoleon Hill. And in W. Clement Stone's book was the famous Napoleon Hill quote that's become my life motto, is what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And so my dad said to me, Gavin, think about getting 9 A's at GCSE and say to yourself 50 times a day what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Okay, Dad. I didn't know any different. So I did 50 times a day what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, and thought about getting 9 A's. And I got my 9 A's, and it blew my mind. So as a 15, 16-year-old, I was just hooked. It was like I was captivated, curious, wanting to learn as much as I could. So book number 2 that in sort of quick succession was Think and Grow Rich. And how many times have I read that book now? And it just set me on this journey and lit the fire in my belly around personal development using our mind. And I just became fascinated about what's the difference that makes the difference in human performance and success. But my playing field was business. Others get captivated in sport, music, or whatever, but for me, my playing field was business. And so I started to study, and whilst I went down an accounting path at university, and then obviously training, my passion was in this area of personal development, growth, and I managed to weave this into my accountancy and finance dissertation by studying what were the common traits of successful entrepreneurs. And in my research, I found a book on the bookshelves in the psychology and self-help section in the bookstore in Newcastle upon Tyne, where I was studying, none other than Awaken, the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And what a healthy tome. And I've still got it pride of place on my bookshelf behind me, and it's loads of highlights throughout it, read it from cover to cover. But this was different. So many of the other books I'd read would have been a bit samey. This was different. And then I read, after that one, his preceding book, Unlimited Power, and that introduced me to NLP. And then that started my journey of getting captivated around the world of NLP. And in the early 2000s, I spent 4 years immersed. I became Michael Breen's apprentice. I spent 4 years immersed in the NLP practitioners, master practitioners, trainer programs, business practitioner, business master practitioner programs, hypnosis. For me, it was like duck to water. And so I just loved helping, coaching, training, inspiring people to step up. And for me, there's nothing more that will rekindle that fire than seeing the results that it's enabled others to achieve.
That's so interesting. Would you, what brings out the best of you? It sounds like you got to be almost at the coalface doing it, and that kicks off the passion. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it does. And it's when I don't know if you looked at any of the wealth dynamics, Roger Hamilton's sort of profile, wealth dynamics or talent dynamics. I'm the star profile, which is that I just love, I'm at my best when I'm presenting or I'm shining the spotlight at somebody else. And so I'm best when I'm on my feet and speaking. And when, on a medium like this, I love that. And it brings the best out of me, and my brain is faster, quicker, most alive. I come up with the answers. You say, okay, sit down in a quiet room and design a new course, come up with new content. I find that more difficult. I'll come up with new ideas. Tumbleweed. But you ask me a question and we could get a train of thought, and I'll just come up with an answer and I go, oh, that was quite good stuff there. So I can often develop my content from being prompted or prodded by somebody that's asking me questions that just gets me to think about things and think on my feet.
So it's interesting because, again, we were talking just before, so even when you're coaching and you seem to enjoy that interaction, that sort of almost the challenges presented to you, and subconsciously it almost starts to, all the years of experience and knowledge just kicks in and said, here we go.
Yeah. And there's also, absolutely. And there's also some esoteric training that I've done as well. So there's I'm open to spirituality. I got a Reiki master training. I did some really kind of far out aura diagnosis training. It wasn't that I can see people's auras or anything, and I don't think I rarely talk about this because it's just like NLP. It's an operating system that sits in the background, but it's improved my ability to pick up on the emotion, the energetic impact of what's going on for somebody, and it helped me to cut through to the core of the issue quicker. So people would say, "How you just hit the nail on the head? How did you do that?" And I do that because I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm watching very attentively, but I'm also open to what hunch, what feeling, what gut feel am I getting? Something more there, because we're energetic creatures. We're all giving off a vibe all the time. If we go around to a couple's house and they've just had a row before we arrived and they've stopped before we get there, we absolutely know, and we'll use this phrase like, you could cut the air with a knife. And so we, as back from early survival times, we needed to be able to pick up on those energetic shifts in others or in the environment. Oops, there's a predator, there's a saber-toothed tiger. We need to run or fight. But so I use some of that more esoteric stuff just heightened my acuity or awareness and being open to, okay, so what am I feeling right now? What have I picked up on? Right, I'll explore that. I'll just go with that hunch, and it works. So yes, there's a huge amount of left brain accounting, finance, or marketing, and right brain creativity, but there's the energetic piece, and I just always wanted to bring all this together in a way. How can I most quickly, most effectively help serve someone to get them from A to B?
That's interesting. A while back, you mentioned, sort of you talking about other people's why. I mean, have you defined your own why?
Yeah. It's I want my why is for people that I've worked with, as many business owners as possible, to get to that state, looking back on their little rocking chair in their 80s and 90s and go, I am fulfilled by my experience and my journey, and I'm full of pride of the legacy that I've created in the business, and I'm full of pride of the legacy that I've created with my family. And for me, I know there are so many business owners might be happy about their family and not about their business, or vice versa. And I really want to help them have a good experience of the quality of their life from both their business and from their family.
Do you think you can have both? I mean, you sort of, it's like cobbler's kids. They're bloody good at making shoes, but they're they're maybe not so good on the other side. I mean, is there a happy balance there?
Yeah, I think there is, but I also, one of the phrases that my dad used to teach us as kids was, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for life. Whilst my dad may have worked a lot of hours and not necessarily being present in our younger years, pre-teen years, he certainly taught us how to fish, and he certainly gave us the work ethic and the desire to improve ourselves and the ambition and the growth and the constant support and motivation. He's my first and best mentor, and so back to your question about can you have it all, I think we can all strive to improve our quality of life's experience, and if we'll all have a different definition of what good looked like or great looks like, but sometimes, as I say, we can be so single-minded, focused on one area to the detriment of others. And I think we are happier, more rounded, more healthy human beings when we've got fulfillment from our family life, when we've got fulfillment through our friendships, where we've got fulfillment through the connection we have with our colleagues and the legacy that we create.
That's awesome. There's a lot there, but change direction here. Earliest memory?
Earliest memory is sailing. I was 4 when my dad got into sailing, and my mum and dad used to be hill walkers, fell walkers, and then they got into, well, my dad in particular got into sailing, and the first boat they got was when I lived in Lancaster in Lancashire. There's a coastal port near Lancaster called Glastonbury, and it's an old kind of grain port, not at all salubrious. And we had the boat there and playing in dinghies and going off sailing across the Irish Sea to the Isle of Man. And yeah, those were early phenomenal memories.
Great memories. I was going to say, it's no seasickness, no issues there.
Not for me, funnily enough. My mum, bless her, she really struggled, and God knows how she endured it for so long. But she really struggled. My brother's mechanism for dealing with it was to go down below decks and fall asleep. And I used to sit in the corner of this, tucked into the corner in the cockpit with my dad. I remember vividly a pretty lumpy trip across the Isle of Man. You know, the Irish Sea is really shallow, relatively speaking. It's shallow, so you get short, steep waves. His other favourite trip was to go across to Peel Island, which is just off Barrow in Furness. And again, sandbanks, really short, steep waves. And I'd be tucked in the corner with my waterproofs on, sucking on opal fruits. And my dad would be sailing the boat, and we sailed across the Isle of Man. It was amazing. And then two little kids scaling up the ladder on the side of the quayside over the top. And I remember one moment that, it was me and my brother. So I guess I must have been about 6 and my brother about 4. And we sort of darted across the quayside in Ramsey in the Isle of Man and disappeared off the edge. And we were clambering down the rungs of the steel ladder to get back on the boat way down as the tide had gone out. There's a massive tidal range there. So the boats would right down the bottom on the mud because the tide had gone out. And so we were clambering down the ladder. And so these concerned onlookers like, God, those two boys just fallen off the edge, those two young kids. And with incredulity, they looked down and saw these two little not toddlers, but two little kids clambering down the ladders onto the side of this boat that sat there on the mud on the bottom of Ramsey Harbour.
It sounds like, your parents were very, trusting is maybe not the right word, empowering maybe, it's sort of to let you get on with it, really. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think they treated us as adults right from the start, and we're the same with our kids. We watch other parents really wrap their kids in cotton wool, and oh dear, you've fallen off. Come on, you can do it. Get back on your back again. Yeah. For us, it's about they need to get the cuts of the bruises. Clearly not going to let them walk off the edge of a cliff, but I think you need to be able to just let them explore and have their own tumbles and their own lessons learned as a result of that. So, yes, in the one hand, they were very trusting for us to get on with it and treat it as like adults, but also as part of rounded development, you need to play. And I think we missed out on some of that. It's my brother and I, our respective wives, really kindly ribbers the fact that none of us can catch. We kind of like our hands going across. So tennis, cricket, football, those games never happened. We weren't playing on boats and walking hills. And so, some of those other skills, what are normal, don't happen. My 7-year-old doesn't know a thing about football, neither do I, but he can name every single lifeboat class that there is out there. You awesome. get into the kids things that your dad's into, don't they? And your parents are into.
It is amazing, as you say, that you just take it on and that becomes natural, and then some things are foreign. But so, growing up in Lancashire, would you been out and about? Were you an outdoorsy sort of a?
Yeah, absolutely. So every single weekend, before my dad got into sailing, we were walking the hills in the Lake District and in the Peak District, and then latterly when we had the boat, but the weather had been one particular season, typical, northwest kind of weather was wet and windy and not getting out on the boat. Dad took the boat up onto Lake Windermere, and all of a sudden you didn't have the restrictions of the tide, and it was a lot less weather dependent. So at about that time, he said, for the same cost of taking the family abroad for a 2-week holiday in the Med in the summer, you could have a boat on Windermere for 52 weeks of the year. Which do you prefer? And this was put to my brother and I, and we both said, 52 weeks of the year. Yeah, that'd be great. So, all school holidays, 6 weeks in the summer, we were playing on boats on Windermere. It was amazing. So, I learned my boat handling. I look back now as I'm teaching my 7-year-old to sail, and a year older than he is, I was taking a boat out the same size as we've got now, 30-foot boat out single-handedly and sailing it and bringing it alongside. And it just gave me so much confidence. And if my eldest hasn't got that level of confidence yet, but I'm hoping by next year he'll start to develop that confidence, and I can help him. But when you pick stuff up and you learn it at a young age, you just have some kind of a natural affinity or a flair for it.
Yeah, it is interesting that enabling the younger people, sort of leaving them with that attitude of, especially your mentality of your Tony Robbins and all that is like, listen, or your Bob Proctor, if if you can see it and you can think it and you can believe it, and it is so.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad taught me a really important lesson around visualization and mindset relatively early on. So, in this company, the sales company, they had a Christmas sales competition, and one particular year, the first prize for winning was you and your partner could go all expensive around the world trip, plane ticket. He didn't want that. He wanted the second prize, and it was a car, and it was a Mercedes car, and he spec'd this Mercedes estate car. No accounting for taste. He wanted a brown Mercedes Benz with alloy wheels and leather. And so he don't forget the sort of silver alloy roof bars. Yeah, and
What about furry dye, or was that just that was
no, there
cheesy?
was none of that. There was none of that. But brown, I ask you, brown. So he used to visualize, and he taught me about this idea that he would picture in his own mind and say to himself, "The mind conceivably, the mind conceive," and vividly imagine in his own mind winning this brown Mercedes Benz with alloy wheels. And he had done the whole competition. It was the last weekend of the competition. A couple of orders that had fallen through, and he'd missed out. And he was on a client's premises, and he sold chemicals. And one of the ranges of chemicals was water treatment chemicals for big boilers. And he went to one of his longest term clients in Lancaster at a big mushroom farm, and he was doing some work in the boiler room, and the owner came into the room behind him and said, "Oh, hi Harold, how you doing?" Dad jumped. He said, "I'm doing great, but also I'm a bit disappointed." He said, "Well, why?" He said, "Well, I was so close to winning the prize of what I wanted on the Christmas competition, but today's the last day. I'm not going to be able to do it." And he said, "Well, how much do you need?" And my dad said, "Well, it's too much. I can't possibly tell you." He said, "No, tell me. How much do you need?" And my dad said, No, I can't possibly. It's too much to ask." And the guy said, "Look, I've got a choice. I either give you a year's worth of order now, an order for a year's worth of supply right now, or I pay the profits to the tax man. So I know what I'd rather do. I'd rather give you this order right now for a year's worth of supply."
Oh.
So he did, and it took him over the line, and he won the second prize and the brown Mercedes Benz with alloy wheels. But the thing that really stuck in my mind, Pete, was when it arrived, when the car showed up at home. And I remember so vividly saying to my dad, "Seeing is believing. Oh, this is amazing, Dad. Seeing is believing." And he went, "No, you got to see it up here first. Believe it before you can see it in reality." And talk about powerful imprinting, about the power of visualization. So, I feel incredibly, incredibly grateful that I was handed the book at the age of 15, that he was into self-help, positive personal development, and then taught me lessons like that around visualization that really has helped me massively in my life. And, it's my mission now to be able to pay that forward to my own kids.
It's an amazing empowerment to do that, and it's a credit to you at that age to read. I know there's not every sort of 15-year-old or 16-year-old would do that and be willing and capable of taking on the lessons, because Think and Grow Rich it's not exactly a page turner as such.
No, I was captivated. I might have been probably a little bit more of a bore in terms of getting girlfriends and that kind of thing, but I was just captivated in it. It was just, for me, it was a door into a whole new world, and I think it really helped build my confidence and my belief about what could be done.
Just tell us, 7-year-old Gavin, what were you like? What were we saying?
Quiet, really timid. Apart from when I was on a boat, I felt confident and I loved that. That was my playground. But outside of that, I was the kid that would never, when you pick teams at school, which sides for your football, I was always the last kid to be picked. I was quiet, possibly a little bit chunky, and quite studious. Worked hard, but quite studious. So, yeah, I think it took a long time for me to get sure in my own skin and get confident in who I was and what I was about.
Were you running to school or running away from school?
Wow, what a question. I was running to school because I wanted to learn. I've always had that thirst for learning, so I was running to school. Yeah.
Well, it's great. And what was your core subjects then as you moved on? What floated your boat, and what were the ones you wanted to forget about?
Latin. Forget about Latin. So I was fortunate enough living in, and I only come to appreciate it so much now, that Lancaster has Lancaster Royal Grammar School, which is it's a state school, or it's a, I don't know what they class it now as, it's a state funded institution. I haven't got the right terminology of what this classification is, but it's a phenomenal school. Anyway, it's not private. You don't have to pay fees to go, and you just have to pass your 11 plus. So to be able to go to a school of that caliber was phenomenal. So I was diligent in my study and my work, but yeah, physics was not a thing for me, and maybe maths may not have been, which is a bit ironic with accountancy. But it's all right. You got spreadsheets and you got a calculator. So yeah, but the, yeah, I just think where I really started to come into my own in terms of my growth and my education, I think was my learning in coaching and NLP. I think for me, the first moment where I learned something and could just immediately pick it up like a duck to water was when I stepped into the world of NLP, and I just got it, and I could just do it, and I could get great results with clients, and that was phenomenal. Up until that point, I had to slog to get to a level of competence in what I was doing.
Wow. Through secondary school and that, I mean, you got your nine A's and GCSEs, which is no tall order, but I mean, was that something, were you happy taking it on, or was it something you had to work at, or?
No, I had to work at it. And interesting, bombed at A levels. So there's been an interesting sort of journey of me through life with kind of like the highs and the lows. Because like most people, my wife calls it's the roller coaster that you seem to create in your world. But yeah, I think when it came to I discovered girls by the time I was doing the A levels, so I got a little bit distracted, and I didn't study as much, and I didn't apply the mindset tools. So this again was a great reinforcement for me about when I applied the mindset tools. I was really successful at GCSEs. I got distracted and didn't apply them at A level, and I didn't do so well. And then when I started to apply them in my accountancy, the times when I didn't apply them in my accountancy training, I didn't pass exams. And when I did, when I applied them in my final accountancy exams, not only did I pass all my exams first time, but I became the top student, the first prize in the Institute of Chartered Accountants Northwest Region, Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, their Northwest Region. So there's just this core is right. Use the mindset tools, get great results. Don't use the mindset tools, get shit results. So there was that. That was that positive or continual reminder or reinforcement. You got to use this stuff. So yeah, I took on the GCSEs, worked hard, and then struggled a bit at A level.
It's interesting because already, I mean, using back your own words, you're saying you have your breakdown first, then you have your breakthrough. So it's almost like, you have your breakthrough with your GCSEs, you break down through A levels, and that life ECG, but almost like you got to
I've continued to do it. So then I went on first year at university. So yeah, the breakdown was the A levels. The first year at university, I won the first prize for the best student in the year.
Mm-hmm.
I was told I was led to believe that the top 4 students in the year would get a first class honours degree, and I was on for the first class honours degree, and I was the 4th placed student in the year, and only the top 2 got a first class honours degree. So I was gutted. It's almost like you set me a target. I need to be in the top 4. I got in the top 4, and I didn't. So you could argue, well, that was a really strong 2-1, but so you might say that was still a success. And then the next down was the first major set of accountancy exams, were the intermediate exams, and 5 papers, and you had to get a 55% as the pass mark. And the first one was the first result I got was 54 in one, 53 in another, 52 in another, 51 in another, 54 in another. I was wondrously consistent, and as a result of failing all 5, I got a P45. I was kicked out of KPMG. Now, interestingly, the senior regional partner of the Northwest, based in Manchester, handed me an olive branch and said, "I'll give you a temporary training contract. You pay for all your own resits. You pay for your own study leave. I'll give you a second chance." And the reason why he did that was in my first year at KPMG, that I love sailing. I got a passion for sailing, and I I put a pretty ballsy proposition together as a 21-year-old kid that KPMG should invest £500,000 to sponsor one of the yachts in the BT Global Challenge around the World Yacht Race. And it went through to national level, regional level, and he saw it and he was really impressed. And I had to do a pitch around it to the partners management team for the, as a 21-year-old kid. And then it went to national level, and the head of KPMG UK at the time was a big sailor, and damn, he didn't pick it. He didn't go for it. Not that I'd ever thought that they'd won it, then I'd get myself a berth on a leg around the world or even a trip around the world, which I wanted. But that didn't happen. But what did happen was I got noticed and he gave me a second chance. So 2 more attempts later, I eventually passed all 5 papers. So when it came to the final exams, I just knew I had to use the mindset tools to do it again because I didn't have enough time, energy in the time to keep doing resets. So I visualized, back to the visualization thing, and the results used to, long before email, the results used to come out, either wait for the postie to send it through your letterbox on a Saturday morning, or go to the newsagents when it first opens at 6:30 in the morning. And the Times on a Saturday at that stage used to produce the results in really narrow, small print, narrow columns. And I don't know why I started to visualize this, but 6 months out from my final exams, I started every morning and every night, I would visualize the right-hand edge of one line, Preston GNS, my surname and initials, and the left-hand edge, the next line down, KPMG Preston, the office where I was studying, training. So every morning, every night, yes, as I read or visualized this. And the exams came and went. The tax paper was an absolute nightmare. About 25% I couldn't finish or didn't have time to do. But the case study went really well. And this was where you had to pull together all of your bits of knowledge to be able to answer a rounded recommendation to a client. Hey, it's what I would do now, the strategy, the bigger picture stuff. So the results come. I'm away sailing with some guys that I knew down in Dartmouth. It was a drizzly morning. I get to the newspaper, I get to the spar shop at 6:30 in the morning. I get my paper and go sit on a drizzly wet park bench on my own. And there's 2 sections of the paper, and the first section is partial passes. So you passed 1, but not all, in this case, 4 papers. Right. And then there's a second section, which is complete pass. And so I looked down the first section, PRES, and my name wasn't there. And that's the section I've been in like so many times before. So my heart was in my mouth, and I'm not afraid to say I was shaking. The paper was shaking. So I then turned to the complete pass, not believing I would be there. And I looked down and went PRE. And what I saw blew my mind. Right on edge of one line, Preston GNS. Next line down, left-hand edge, KPMG Preston. Exactly as I visualized it. No, in the first set of exams, I'd been out of my graduate intake. I was the only one of 6 students to fail all papers, to miss out on all 5 papers. This time, I was the only one of the graduate intake to pass all 5 papers, and I won the first prize in the Northwest Region of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. None of the partners in the firm could believe it, and I choose to think it wasn't because I was the sharpest knife in the drawer. Yes, I'm more suited to bigger picture strategy than I am to detailed tax, but it's because I use the mindset stuff.
It's an amazing scenario. Almost, you seem to thrive under threat or under those situations, which seems to bring out the best in you, right?
Yeah, you're very perceptive, Pete. You pulled that out twice in this conversation, and you're right, I do. And it doesn't make for a comfortable existence. But yeah, I do.
Yeah. I'm curious then. So really coming through school, I mean, did you do any side jobs? Did you do anything else when in school, or what was your vision at that time?
Yeah, so I'd have a paper round. So I did the local free paper, and we grew and grew and grew that. So we took on whenever other rounds became available. My brother and I took them on, and then we'd enlist the help of my mum. And so, gosh, we would spend, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hours a week out delivering free papers
on the bike. And
yeah, well, no, because it was literally door to door to door. Every single door got one. So we were walking around, and we had one little trolley to pull extra stuff on. So yeah, we got used to which houses had the horrible dogs that would slam the paper in quick and get your hand out of the way very quick, or which letterboxes would bite your fingers off. Shortcuts over hedges and between gaps in fences and all that kind of thing. And then I went on and I had a Saturday job in a florist of all things. I had a weekend Sunday job at B&Q. So, my dad again keeps coming up. Whether this was a good education or not, he would say, "Well, if you want something," I remember when it came to the first car, he said, "If you want something, then you've got to work out how you can pay for it. But get yourself a loan and then work out how you can pay for it, meet your repayments." And some would argue, save the money up first before you spend it. So there's different views on that, but he did give me the reassurance of the belief that, okay, so you want that car, right? Let's work out how you can fund it, how you can afford to meet the repayments on a loan, and so that when I went to university, I would come home a couple of times a month, and I'd put a notice up on the notice board over in Newcastle. Who wants to drive back over towards the lakes and towards Lancaster? And a fiver ahead, filled the car and paid for the fuel. So yeah, that there was that. There was always that little bit of a kind of like a business or an earning thing that went along with it.
That's good though. I mean, you always sort of had your feet sort of held to the fire slightly, which does no harm, I think.
Sailing on Windermere and with kids in dinghies. My brother and I, I'm particularly driven by my brother, if I'm honest. But if anybody ran out of petrol or broke down in their speedboat on Windermere, we'd go up and tow them back in for a fiver, and so that fueled the dinghy. So yeah, there was always that.
I love it. Out of curiosity, what was your father's background? I mean, what sort of gave him the fire in the belly?
So he was originally an electrician. He was a spark, and he then changed roles, and I think he had, in terms of bosses, one particular boss that really encouraged him and believed in him, and that he could sell, and showed him how to sell. And I think my dad was never short of the work ethic and then the desire. So he went from an electrician into sales, into insurance sales, and into other sort of types of sales, and then chemical sales in the end, before he then grew his own business. So, I think his biggest successes have been hard work, vision, and his ability to sell and engage with people.
And what about your mother?
Yeah, so she originally started, her career was a dress designer. She was advanced City and Guilds in dress designing, and then she put that career, or gave that career up to be a mum, and she was basically present for our schooling years. Really, our primary school was minutes away from home, so we'd used to come home for lunch, and so she was always there. So great mum. And then later, as she kind of got back into the world of work, she got into retail, or into working in a shop. But then when my mum and dad divorced, and when she found a new partner, and now her husband, he had his own walking and climbing small chain of shops, and she did a fundamental job in turning that around and in helping that business grow and make it run smoothly, etc.
Oh wow! Why is that, do you think? Is it her processes or people skills or what?
She likes everything tidy, and she hated it old stock, and so she just got it sold, and she got a pretty good design eye, I think, for what was selling and what wasn't selling. And again, the work, customer service, I think that bit wanted to do right by the customer. So if a customer had a problem, they would fix it. That worked very well.
So very, very strong upbringing then for yourselves, very solid, and sort of empowering you guys.
Yeah, I think back to an early comment. It was strong on work ethic. It was probably weaker on fun and games and play. But it was strong on work.
It sounds like were you a little bit old for your years as such?
Oh, for sure. And I'll be honest now. I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they say, "Come on, play with me," and I look at them, and I say to my wife when she gets frustrated with me, "Why don't you play with them?" And I say, I don't know how to. And that, what do you mean you don't know how to? I said, because it was never did it. We never had that. I see other dads getting down on the floor with their kids and playing with whatever toy that they're playing with, and they spend hours doing it. And I'm going, what? How do you do that?
Black magic. Yeah. I mean, jumping a bit ahead, but how was it having kids for you guys?
Amazing for my wife, tough for me. I say amazing for my wife, hard work for my wife, and all credit to her, because up until lockdown, 3 days a week I'll be away on the road, 2 or 3 nights a week, every week I was away. Within I think 48 hours, certainly 3 days of the birth of our first child, I was off doing client work. And the kind of client work I was doing at that time was I was doing big training events or workshops in corporate. And, it's one thing to rearrange an individual coaching client. It's another thing. You've got 25 people from all over the UK coming together in a room, or sometimes even flown in elsewhere if it was an international corporate, and you've got to be there. So, yeah, I was there, and so yeah, that was tough for her, but it was a big adjustment, and I must admit, I am the first. I talk about the importance about that balance. It's something that's work in progress for me, because I don't think I'm a natural dad, nor was my dad a natural dad. My dad loved us to bits, but he really came into his own when we were like little adults that we could start helping him in his business and engaging in sailing and pastimes like that. He wasn't very. I don't think he ever changed a nappy. So you're a product of your environment, and I have changed way too many nappies. But I'm looking forward, as my boys get older, that I can go camping and I can go sailing and go sailing offshore with them, and I can teach them about business and that sort of thing. So there was slightly more adult games rather than the kids' games.
Oh, listen, it makes sense, and I get it, because I know with my own kids, I did the nappies. Well, I'm still doing the nappies, but it took me 6 months to get to like them. So, because women have the opportunity of meeting them from inception, but I think dads just sort of go, "This is your child," and you're like, "Okay, what do I do?" And it doesn't respond really for 6 months, and then you can start to get a bit of feedback then. As you said, it's like a client, just stonewall face. You've no idea whether they're loving you or hating you.
I was 40. I'd put it off till the age of 40 before I had my first, and I remember vividly in the maternity ward and the baby's head crowning, and I remember having this irrational feeling: push it back! I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. It's gonna go back. Of course, my wife, you spat your coffee there, Pete. I'm sorry. and of course, my wife's screaming, and I'm going, I'm not ready for this. Man up. And I had this irrational thing that's like, shit, this is obviously it's real. It's being born. My little boy's being born, bless him. And but at the time, it was just like, oh my God, was it wise?
You almost don't feel responsible enough. It's like, really, you're going to let me leave with this?
Yeah.
It's like,
and that moment when you first take them in the carry car or the car seat out to the car, and you strap them in, like that drive home from hospital for the first time with this precious cargo in. Oh my God,
yeah.
I've never driven so timidly in my life.
30 mile an hour up the motorway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we digress slightly. So KPMGs, you've got through the exams. You've gotten that sort of. You're getting the recognition in the paper, and you visualize that. So where are you going from there?
I got headhunted by BAE Systems. So they have a big site in Lancashire, in a place called Wharton near Preston. Mm-hmm. Used to be where they built the Eurofighter, the planes, so the Typhoon, the Eurofighter Typhoon. So I got headhunted to go and work with them. I did an internal management consultancy role with them to start off with. I remember one Friday afternoon, I got headhunted because of the exam results, and that profile it gave me, and it was for the time it was quite an acceptable and agreeable step up in salary. So I jumped for it, and I also wanted to go into business and get more into business. And I did a couple of roles with them. I got into big sort of management consultancy stuff internally within the business, and giving feedback to MDs and deputy MDs of multi-million-pound business units. It's pretty big stuff, really. And through that, I got exposure to a guy that would facilitate. I got introduced to a guy who would facilitate some events with those MDs, and then that opened a door. They were growing a team in their corporate university down in the head office in Farnborough. So they created an internal university, and they built a team, and they ran an assessment centre for that team. And there was an opportunity for a secondment. And this was another kind of fire in the belly moment, to be honest, Pete, was that they had a cost saving drive at this particular time, and there was a headcount reduction, and every single department had to reduce their headcount in their department by 20%. At a time where I basically said the offer or the proposition was I would go and get seconded for a year down at head office, but my head count would still stay up in Wharton, near Preston, and I would be paid for So my boss had to take a 20% headcount cut, and I'm saying to him, "Oh, well, you're going to pay for me, but I'm going to go into common. That's a good idea, isn't it?" And I managed to do well at this assessment center. I got through, and I managed to get that agreement, which was amazing. But at the time, again, another fire, the fire in the belly bit was people saying to me, "You're insane. You could lose your job if you don't get this if you don't pass this assessment center. There isn't another role for you that's been left over. You're going to lose your job."
Mm.
And I just had this most burning certainty, gut feel, desire to this is the right thing to do, and I got through, and immediately this was the bridge between accountancy and accountancy and finance through to working in the area of personal development and growth and coaching, because in that environment, it's about this time outside of work, I'm paid through work. I was doing all my NLP training, but then I was involved in doing coaching and facilitating senior teams of multi-million-pound boards, and introducing a high-performance coaching capability to the top 650 directors around the world. So I brought Michael Breen in, the guy teaching the NLP, so his amazing team that he pulled together, and we this phenomenal program that we ran within BAE Systems that became a game changer for BAE Systems.
Well, BAE it's a massive company, obviously massive in the States, you know, the
Sure.
scale of it, and it's to be under the wing of that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, it's
so it was good grounding, and then I got experience of putting proposals into PLC boards and how that goes, and then there was a change of leadership, and as is often the case, new broom sweeps clean, and I was the head of our department was effectively moved on, exited the business, and we were kind of tired with the old brush, really. So I left. I kind of took voluntary redundancy at that stage, and this was back in 2002, and I decided, right, and set up my own business.
It was a lot, because 2002 was a bit of a big year for you, right?
Yeah, it was a big year in terms of setting up my own business. It was also a big year in terms of I got my first corporate contract. So within the city, Aon, a big insurance and reinsurance broker, the lady that was head of learning and development there had been on one of the business practitioner programs of NLP and really liked my style. She was looking for a new coach. And I was brought in as the young kid on the coaching team, and I was given 6 of their high potentials of Aon to coach. And they had a really good format where you would coach each of the 6 individually, but every 6 weeks you would get them together in a group and you and I would call a mastermind, but it was an action learning set. And we would do an action learning set with them. And so they effectively got group coaching and individual coaching. And I did really well with them. I got all 5 of the 6 all got promotion within a year, and the 6th person had just stepped up into a big role when I started to work with him. So we got him performing in his role. So that kind of put me on. It was a really good launch contract, really, for me from a coaching point of view.
You were what, in your late 20s at this point?
No, so I'd have been. Sorry, yes, you're right. I'd have been about 27. Yeah, I'd have been about 27. So I was coaching in the City of London with people that were way senior to me and way older than me, and I remember very clearly, the look or the question, what can a young kid like you do to teach me? And I would say, I can't tell you about your role. You're your domain area. You're the expert in your area of domain knowledge. But what I do know is a process that can help you, coach you to pull the best out of you, get the best out of you. And yeah, I had many of those moments where, go on then, show me how good you are, coach me. And that was the moment where I would coach myself internally and then go on and really help them and make a difference.
It is interesting, because I had a similar experience myself, where I was almost baby faced, and there was a lot going on. But when you're the sort of the coach in the room, and possibly the lowest paid in the room too, it's like it's the challenge. But it goes to show that the paycheck doesn't necessarily equal the pay. The knowledge or the age doesn't equal the knowledge either.
I've developed an amazing relationship. I'm very grateful for the relationship with HSBC, and that relationship now has spanned over a decade. And I did a number of years back a tour around the UK, a comms roadshow with the head of commercial banking for the whole of the UK, the deputy head, his kind of exec assistant, and me and the senior partner of this consultancy firm that I was working with him. And the corporate team would do the morning session. We would do the afternoon training and development session. And we would often travel around with them. So I got some time with the senior team and I would end up coaching them. I would observe how they all delivered their thing. And then we got to the end of the roadshow Thursday night. We were at this amazing Chinese restaurant in Manchester, on the outskirts of Manchester. And I remember a few glasses of wine in, having the Dutch courage to go across to Steve, he was called, and he was the head of the commercial bank. So he's like God in that world, you know. He's a very, very senior guy that sits on the 26th or sat on the 26th floor of the HSBC Tower, Steve Price. And he was quite a scary character for a lot of people. And I crouched down next to his chair and I said, and I'd already had some great conversations with him during the week. And I said to him, you know, do I have your permission to give you some feedback? And he looked at me and he went, yeah. And then I joked and said, okay, so what I'm about to say now could be rather career limiting for me. And then I just basically told him where he connected with his team and what he could do to improve his connection, where he lost his connection and what he could do better.
Wow.
It was a ballsy thing to do. And do you know what happened then was the most amazing in-depth conversation. We pulled our chairs away. He opened up. We had the most phenomenal conversation. And it just showed me that times, it just reminded me that people in very high senior positions, nobody tells them the truth. Nobody gives them any feedback, or rarely is probably more accurate. And sometimes having the open, candid, courageous conversation is the very thing that needs to be had. And I remember fondly with a wry smile, actually, the next time there was a bigwigs meeting on the 26th floor of the HSBC Tower in Canary Wharf, and Steve was shaking the hands of the rest of the team I was in, and he came up and gave me a big bear hug, and the partners around me as in the consultancy firm were going, what the, you know, what's happened there? And it was just, I just genuinely shared some feedback and gave him some tools that he could help him engage better with the people he worked with.
Is that something you intended to practice in terms of connecting with people, or is it just something that made sense to you?
It made sense to me, but one of the things I got from the NLP training, and particularly some deeper training that I'd done around sensory acuity, so spotting the body language, plus some of the esoteric stuff I made reference to, the ability, I used to say, I can see stuff. And it was that just to watch people closely, but then also be aware of the impact that they had on the people around them, and was able to often give really good insights around that.
It's amazing when you can and you actually take time to, well, I won't answer the question. You know, are you picking up on, you know, we talked about the energy, or what is it that you're actually looking at there? Is the language, is it the tone, or
it's all of it? So I'm watching really carefully at the body language and microfacial gestures. My kids hate it when they try to lie because they can't get away with it, because I just say, I'm sorry, the corner of your mouth just twitched ever so slightly. And God, what's he called? Eric Robbie. There was a guy called Eric Robbie that was a real NLP master trainer, but his speciality was this thing called sensory acuity. So it was your ability, where somebody was, you know, in NLP they talk about accessing visual, so what you see, accessing auditory, what you hear, accessing kinesthetic, what you feel. And he was a master. I did a phenomenal 2-3 day course with him where you could turn around and look the other way, and I could see by the movement of your shoulders or the tension of your head whether you were creating a picture in your mind, or whether you were talking to yourself, or whether you were accessing a feeling without even looking at your face. And I just became really attuned to it, as well as I could see even obviously clearer when looking at somebody. So that sensory acuity piece was one. Looking deep into somebody's eyes and just seeing what I saw, you know, and then picking up on the feelings. So when you know, people are warned, certainly on the NLP courses that I went on, whatever you do, don't go and NLP all over everybody after you've done it. And I did NLP a bit, and I used to have a party trick, particularly if I had a few drinks, so I would do a little bit of that kind of, not the psyche. I remember being propping up a bar in Barbados or Bahamas, Barbados once, and being able to sit down with this guy and his girlfriend and being able to tell his hit this guy exactly what his girlfriend's about, where she was confident, where she wasn't confident, and his girlfriend thought it was hilarious, and he was absolutely spooked to be. So yeah, it became a little bit of a bore, and sometimes I made some misjudgments doing that out socially. So I turned that right down and only switch that on when I'm working with people, when I'm clients.
Well, I mean, do people naturally give off energy, especially in the business environment? Because I suppose for me, having time in London, it was great, but it's you kind of climbing the ladder to get the hell out, or climbing the ladder. It's different. I suppose my question is, it's sometimes, is it not hard to read people when they're in that professional environment, and it might be that's right for them, or they could be struggling, right?
Yeah, and that's where some of the sense of the feeling piece I tune into. What's the vibe in the room? What's the vibe that they're where they're at? There's another phrase that's related to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic is words, music, and dance. And if the words don't match the dance in the body language, then there's something a bit of a foot. Or a phrase I would often use would say, I'm hearing it, but I ain't feeling it. So if a client would say to me, right, I will do A, B, and C that you've just said, I'm going, I'm hearing it, but I ain't feeling it. I have got no belief in what that you just given me the BS you knew I wanted to hear. Come on, let's uncover that. Let's get to the heart of that. And so I think that's what has really helped me just call it, to name it as it is. And it's also given me the courage to facilitate the conversations that are not pleasant conversations, but often need to happen.
Mm.
It's often it's released a lot of blockages in teams and in individuals.
I've always found that, I suppose it depends on the organization. I mean, HSBC is a fairly forward-looking bank, but you do get huge profile structures, huge teams, and people that are potentially in positions that aren't necessarily qualified, but they were the best person for the job, or they've had the time in the seat, therefore they're there, but haven't necessarily had the feedback or the qualifications to get where they are. It gets lonely there.
Yeah, and I've also had experience in other organisations, like did a piece of work within Ford Motor Company, or Ford Retail in GB, and I was working with people that were in senior management positions or director positions, down to the lowest paid in the team, that would clean the showrooms, or collect and drop off customers' vehicles. And that was a really interesting challenge to engage with people at so many different levels in an organization, of so many different motives to go to work, and so many different work ethics. And one of the things that they would say, you can't do that, management will say no. No, there's no way I'll do that, management will never agree. And because I'd worked with and coached with the management, I just picked up the phone there and then in this workshop and said, such and such, can we do this? We think this is a good idea, it will improve the process. And they went, actually, that's a really good idea. Yeah, you can, crack on. So I put the phone and I said, right, that's a yes. And they were just like jaws on the floor. And I said, okay, so no more excuses. You've got permission. But I know you can't. Okay, so what's really going on here? You raised an objection. I've dealt with that objection. You now presented me with more objections. So what's this really all about then? And one of the most technically sophisticated coaching questions I ever learned was really profound one. This one, Pete, is, so what's that all about then? Best said with a Lancashire accent, I'm sure. So what's that all about then? And it uncovers loads of stuff, and they either liked me or loathed me for engaging in that conversation, because I showed the stuff up for them, and just got rid of the excuses. But then you can have the real conversation. So what's this really about? It's not about management. It's about what you want to do. And are you in the right role? Are you in the right company? Are you in the right place for what you want to do in your work?
Were you a natural fit in the London scene? You're Lancashire boy, stick you on a boat out in the lake by yourself, and now you're down in the big smoke.
No, my brother moved down there relatively young, and has had a very successful career in London, and then Dubai, and then back in London. And he often said, when I used to stay over at his when I was working, you'd be so much more successful if you moved down here and lived down here. You'd have so much more clients, and I would have been. I love going to the city, whether it be to London or Manchester or New York or wherever, and the vibrancy and the dynamism and the pace. I love that, but I also can't wait to get away. And I just love being out in nature. And so I like the combination of both. Um, there's a word, I don't know whether it's kind of a spiritual word, but there's a word called a mightiism. So the pervasive energy or attitude of an area. So in London, the miasm is about drive, it's pace, it's passion, it's go for it. We can do it. We're going to work hard. We're going to work from 5 in the morning till 2 in the morning. And then somewhere more sleepy, like Windermere or a coastal retirement seaside resort, that is more laid back. And I often found back up in Windermere in August, when everybody took holidays and there wasn't much client work, and the Lake District weather being more orientated towards the grey and the wet rather than the sunshine and the beach, to feel quiet, it was just so slow, and so there was no dynamism at all. So that could be quite tough. So I love the combination. I love the contrast. I love the difference. I love the variety, and I've always thrived off variety. So I can jump into a business in North Wales equally as I can jump into a business up a tower in Canary Wharf. I'm cool about that.
It's always interesting if you have you can take the compression time. London is super efficient at getting stuff done, as long as you can decompress and
and he needed that. You take me out and put me on a boat, and that's my meditation. And if anything, this year with the lockdown, and by the time the lockdown was lifted in Wales and we were allowed to travel more than 5 miles, there was not enough of the sailing season left to warrant putting the boat back in the water. So I've missed getting out in the water this year massively, and that is my decompression.
So interesting. So you really through Aon and through there. Where'd you go next on your journey?
So that started probably about a decade of coaching in big corporates, mainly in the city. So you saw me in organisations like Rio Tinto, Royal Bank of Scotland, Aon, a financial services company in the Docklands called Edward Jones, an American organisation. So I did a lot of big organisational coaching, and did that for a long time and did very well with it. And then I got more ensconced into projects like within a client system like HSBC, where I coached everybody from the head of the banking and the commercial banking right the way through to a relationship manager dealing with individual customers, and did lots of training around strategy with them. So I did a lot of internal training. So for example, the head of business banking now, he wrote the foreword for my new book, Survive and Thrive. David Beattie's the head of business banking for the UK. I coached him a decade ago, and I knew he was tipped for I tipped him for the top back then. Of course, others did as well. It wasn't just me, but I could see the talent and the flair and the potential in him a decade ago, and he's now head of the business banking in the UK. So good times. I obviously made a mark, and I'm fondly respected and remembered, and that led to the opportunity to speak to their customers, and I did a pilot event that ultimately became a 2-year national speaking tour with HSBC, 84 gigs over 2 years, and it was called The Strategies for Growth. And it was a combination of the strategic trends, the mindset, the marketing, and the mechanics for scaling a business. And that was a phenomenal platform and a phenomenal opportunity.
It says that you were doing this all the way through 2007, 8, 9 as well. So I mean, that was an unusual time for all the banks.
Yeah, so 2007, that was really interesting for HSBC. So I was doing a lot of work inside HSBC over that period of 2007, 8, 9. HSBC were the poster child, really, because they were relatively cautious, conservative as a bank. So all ships go to a safe harbour in a storm, and that's actually what happened in the markets for HSBC at the time. What was really fascinating was come to 2012 when things were picking up, HSBC in the markets weren't seen as exciting enough. So, perversely, they had their cutbacks then. And I went from internally within this organised consultancy practice where I was as an associate, as a subcontractor. I'd sold in on behalf of them a piece of work for me to do, which was a 3-month piece of work. And I remember I was in bank in the city, and I got a call from this regional director on the 8th of December. I remember it so vividly, where I was stood in Poultry, and he said, "Sorry, I'm losing my job. Program's cancelled." And that was my 3 months worth of pipeline through to March. And already at the time, I knew all my eggs were in this one basket. And at the time, I made the conscious decision, make hay where the sun shines. But I also could see the writing on the wall. So I thought, I'll secure this one piece of work, 3 months of work. It'd be 2 or 3 days a week. That gives me a financial certainty that I can then develop other clients. So cue another roller coaster moment. I didn't have a pipeline. I didn't have other clients, and I went, all of a sudden I lost all my business. And so it took me 4 months to get more work, 5 months, 30 days credit payment terms. It took me 5 months to get paid. And in fairness to my now wife, she stood by me, quite a baptism of fire, really. It's like, hey, great, we've just moved in together. I've got no income whatsoever. No, I won't go and get a job. I'm bloody good at this. Yes, I will keep that. I'll find a way. And she stood by me, and I got back on my feet and got working again.
It is a bit of it's a baptism of fire, and it's a test of people when they get to that squeaky bum time.
And my wife's got a background in the NHS, and at the age of she qualified as a dietitian, and then at the young age of 26, she was in a management role. She ran a team of dietitians. She ran the department, and she took on dietetics and speech and language therapy, and then before our first child, she was divisional manager of nursing and 650 nurses and £16 billion worth of budget. And so she was used to certainty of salary, and even to this day, the roller coaster of running a business is something that she struggles with. She finds it quite challenging.
It is interesting because some people just can't do it. Entrepreneurship, self-employment, no thanks. I'd rather boil my head. Other people are kind of going, I really couldn't work for the man or whatever you frame it is. And it's funny, you guys are almost opposite.
Yeah, we are, and in honesty, it creates some tension because she sees the amount of hours I put in, and she sees she enjoys the highs, and then she sees the lows, and I guess she's kind of like, my God, you still keep plugging away, don't you? But I think the area where I need to step up more is to give certainty at times around holidays. I've done the thing that my dad did. You can either have a boat for 52 weeks of the year, or in this case, the North Wales coast for 26 weeks of the year, or you can go away on holiday for 2. And fascinatingly, the economics are exactly the same. So for the last 3 years, it's been the boat. We had end of March, it would go in until the end of September. Every single weekend and holiday, the boys went playing on the water. They spent their weekends swimming in the sea, and even in April, and digging sandcastles and eating ice creams. And what a great environment for them to grow up and play around with. But it sounds like a first world problem. It's an amazing adventure, but it's hardly relaxing, and particularly with young kids. Our second child was 12 days old when we first took him out on the boat. So, and particularly then a year on when he's crawling, oh, what's over the edge there? It can be quite in climbing, and the health and safety nightmare, aren't they? So that kind of environment. So yeah, it could be quite of an edgy, stressy kind of environment, really. And then you try and coordinate that with the routines that young children or babies need around feeding time and sleep time, etc. And you're in this dynamic environment that's rocking all over the place, and my wife's feeling seasick. So yeah, it's bless her. I love her dearly for having the patience and determination to come sailing.
It's great, isn't it? Because you compare that to the corporate world, and it's like, no, we have a team of people for that. I was always struck by, it's different companies. In the company I work for, there was 10,000 in the company, and there was a team for everything. You want something printed, they do that. You want something financed, they do that. You get to a small entrepreneurial company and you go, who's signing the check? I go, well, you're signing the bloody check. It's like, who's doing the strategy? Well, you are. And by the way, fix the printer while you're at it, will you? It's like, and then you get home to the family, and it doesn't matter how qualified you are, your 7-year-old will reduce you to nothing in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great initiation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So coming through that time, you've sort of had the squeaky bum moment, and really sort of having to move on. How did you move on from that, and where'd you go?
I vowed 2 things. The first main thing was I would never have all my eggs in one basket ever again. So I needed to find another sort of associate opportunity, so another consultancy where I could go and support them and be a really strong right hand to them whilst I built up my own client work. So solution hard work. So I would, in my industry, I learned, in terms of the coaching training industry, that 8 days of delivery is usually enough in a month because you get burnt out, etc. And I was doing 8 days of delivery every 2 weeks. I was doing 16 days of delivery every month. Sometimes I was doing 20 days of delivery every month, because what I was doing was the work as an associate, but also then building up my own client base, because I knew that if I didn't build up my own client base in addition, I'd be exposed to the same risk that I had been doing with HSBC. So yeah, I nurtured both and both aspects, and I found that whenever I got opportunity to go and speak, and then whilst I was doing this corporate, while I was doing this associate stuff, then I got some opportunities to do the first of the pilot events for that HSBC tour that I mentioned earlier. And then that opened up further opportunities. So I ran both in parallel for a long time.
Well, it's always good to, as you say, keep the two things going at the same time. That allows you to, I suppose, clarity of mind to know that you can have version of not passive income, but multiple things going on to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, and I think you identified earlier in this conversation about I perform best when the pressure's on and my back's against the wall. And I think we know about this concept about towards and away from motivation, that two fundamental drivers for human to do what they do is either they want to move away from pain, that's away from motivation, or move towards pleasure, towards motivation. I'm hugely away motivated, so when I put weight on, right, I need to do more exercise, I need to watch my diet a bit more. But once I get back to a weight where, okay, I can relax a bit on what I'm eating or whatever. I've always loved exercise, but never really been good about being super diligent on my food choices. And so I think that away from motivation bias meta program, if we use NLP terminology, has spurred a little bit this roller coaster. So things have really gone wrong now, or things aren't going well. I'll fight back. I'll push hard. I'll put everything into it. I turn it around, and then, hey, life's good now. I can just take it easy a bit. And then, so I got a good friend of mine that I met back in 2000 when we were doing NLP training together, and he just laughs at me. He says, "You do so well at this roller coaster, Gav." He said, "One minute you're having a real challenge, and the next minute you're absolutely stonking and storming." And so I think I need that whole raise the threshold of where the away from motivation kicks in. I've just got to raise that, keep pushing forward, so it's no longer not acceptable for me not to have a boat and be able to take the family away on holiday for 2 weeks. That's
a great way to be. So moving on then, what that sort of kind of brings us up to current day, does it?
Pretty much. Well, actually, there's one little chapter which is a very pertinent, pivotal chapter in between, which I'll quickly relay, is that after HSBC, or part of that time, I ran a program, pitched it to the audience with a ballsy proposition: work with me for a year and I'll double your business or your money back. And I took 4 cohorts through that program. More than a third of those businesses more than doubled in a year. One business increased their turnover by factor of 5 in 18 months. That was a great year-long program. Did a massive combination of group coaching and masterminding, individual strategic planning with those businesses and coaching them. Got great results. Then we had the referendum, and my program about double your business in a year was built upon the fundamental presupposition that it's possible. And in a market of wavering confidence, it became harder and harder to sell what was an 18 grand a year program. So at that time, one of my clients who had been through the program said, "Come and join my board. Come and help me grow a business." So he had an M&E, mechanical and electrical contracting business, and it was 11 million. He says, "Gavin, I want you to work with me and grow this in 5 years from 11 million to 50 million. So big decision. I stopped my lifetime of coaching, 15 years of my own business, to go and join a board. And I was responsible for finance and for HR and for strategy and for marketing and for legal and for IT. So to build the functional capability for that business to scale, a lot of work, hard work. We grew it from 11.5 million to 19 million in 18 months. And at the same time as doing that, he said, "You're doing a good job of this. Do you want to be MD of the sister company, a software as a service business?" And I grew the annual recurring revenue of that 80% in 9 months. And then one of our biggest customers, went bust, owing us 1.9 million and took us out. Cue another slide down the roller coaster. So that was just before Christmas 2018. And so all of a sudden I'd stopped my coaching business. I was out of a job and start again. So
it's a big lesson and a big egg in a basket, isn't it?
Yeah. But I look back now, back to the book, and the book Survive and Thrive: How to Secure, Scale, and Succeed in Business. I started writing this book a number of years ago, and the book now that's published on the 30th of July is so much better for the journey that I've been through, because it's now, I will inspire you. I do inspire. I open up the art of the possible in your own head to what you can achieve in your business, but I underpin it with the depth and the wisdom around this is what could go wrong and this is what we need to build solid. So we're not building this growth on sinking sand. We're building on rock solid foundations. And so investors ask the question, how many times have you cycled? And what they mean by that is, how many times have you been through the cycle of a rise and demise of a business? And yeah, I've done that. I've been through that, and I've learned a lot, and I know what we did right. I know what we could have done differently. And I also know, after a lot of kind of post-mortem reflection, what I still couldn't have changed influence the outcome with. So it's made me a better person. It's made me more humble. It's made me more aware of the pitfalls and the challenges. And I just know now, the warning signs of where a business is going wrong. But interestingly, I have to go through the journey myself to better serve my clients. Sure. The next clients I had was a returning client, he's a very, very dear friend of mine. His previous finance manager hadn't done a good job. They'd done loads of work they had not invoiced for. He'd not managed the cash flow, and he brought me in the February of 2019, and he said, "I've got a £500,000 hole in my cash flow that's going to hit in a few months' time. This is my business. It's my baby. It's 10 years of my life. I'm going to lose it. Can you help me save it?" And 8 months, 9 months later, there was cash in the bank and there's a profit on the bottom line, and turned his business around. And I applied all the strategies that I share in the Survive portion of the book. Some of that I'd found what had worked when I was in the M&E business, when there was a guy screaming down the phone at me, "Pay me £8,000 by 4 p.m. this afternoon or I'll be around there with a baseball bat." They've been through that and know what works and what doesn't work, and managed to create a phenomenal result for this client. He's a really dear and true friend of mine, and we've turned his business around, and we're now embarking on another exciting phase in its growth.
That gets a big smile on the face there. It's you love the challenge, don't you?
I love the challenge, and I love the result that it makes for the people I help, the clients.
It's interesting. You refer to a lot of your clients as friends, and people you've really got to know. That's quite a beautiful thing.
Yeah, another one of my success stories is a guy that I met him. He did the W Business program. He said, "Look, he's in sports supplements business. I've got a retail shop. I've got an underperforming website. I've got a level of personal debt. I'm so ambitious. I'm keen. I want to grow it. I've got a long-term girlfriend I want to propose to, but I'm not going to do it until I'm out of personal debt. I've cleared my personal debt." So he grew his turnover, his revenue by 5 times in 18 months. He went into contract manufacturing as well as retail. We coached him through the cash flow challenges of the growth. He paid off his personal debt. He built some wealth. He expanded his business. He proposed to his girlfriend, now engaged. And they've just had their first child, and none of that, there's the part I played in that journey, in terms of, and that to me is incredibly rewarding to know that not only have I helped him achieve, we're about to launch, I'm still working with him, about to launch his brand in the US, a new brand in the US. It's really rewarding to be able to help people to see not only the benefits in their business, but in their personal finances and in their personal life.
Well, yeah, it's a great place to be. It is a great place to be.
He's now grappling with a newborn baby. How does he fit that in with work? And hey, I can help you. I live that.
Yeah, it's seriously, you're changing up, but good luck. Yeah, it's going to try and get that balance. where you are, I mean, talk to us about the book. What sort of trigger and said, right, now's the time to write the book. Let's go.
I don't think I think it's been a labour of love for a number of years, if I'm honest. And what happened was I'd get busy with work, I'd get busy with speaking, I'd get busy with new kids, newborns, and it was always deprioritised. And it was after the kind of setback over Christmas 2018 and 2019, I thought I needed to put myself into something very constructive. And I sat down and I said, look, I want to finish this book off. And the book would have been a book about the Thrive part, the strategy compass, which is my 6-step model to help grow and scale businesses. And I just thought, what I've just been through in survival, actually loads of businesses go through that. Loads of business owners go through that. So I slightly changed the book and I created a 2-part book, Survive and Thrive. So I wrote part 1, Survive, around the strategies to keep the boat afloat of your business, and then developed and built out part 2, particularly around the scaling bit. So part 5 of my model, step 5 of my model, is a capability, and handily sort of 5-stage mnemonic called scale, and which is you've got to get right, you've got to get systems right, you've got to get cash right. Growth is so hungry on cash. You've got to get enough working capital in your business. A is for advance or innovation, L's for leadership and culture, and E's for effectiveness, both personal and team effectiveness. So I built that out a lot more from my experiences in the M&E business, and also the Survive portion of the book was again based on that.
I was just taken slightly. I love that, the analogy, and almost, I suppose, depending on different finance people you talk to, saying it's, what is this expression, lack of revenue is a heart attack, you're dead. Lack of profit is like cancer. It's a long-term death, but almost your survival is like, well, get the revenue, and you were saying if there's a hole in the business, there's a hole in the cash flow. Survive, get the revenue, and then your thrive is profit. So, one is to continue, one is to thrive it. So I love that. I love the, there's 2 parts, and it's almost like feeding the yin and yang. You've got the accountant who's like, show me the numbers, and then you've got the strategists that going, let's think big.
And that's me, and that is that I tried to create something that's sort of comprehensive, or something that this is the manual to help. This is the book I should have had when I was 21. This is the book my dad should have had. This is the book to get you from survival, the comprehensive guide that it's not as simple as just looking at numbers or looking at strategy or looking at marketing or getting your mindset right. You need to do all of these things. And build the operational capability of your business and the team. And that for me is that creative kind of like tension that I want to excite you and inspire you and show you it's possible, but I want to build behind that with these are the things that you need to create a profitable and sustainable business. And I think I need to embrace a little bit more about the account. For so long I pushed that away. I almost went to the other end of the spectrum. No, I'm all about coaching and don't do numbers. That's a shameful past. And now it's I don't want to be a boring accountant, but now it's the combination of both that is essential for sustainable growth.
You look at, you take any of them. You take your Warren Buffetts, your Bransons, all those guys. What do you call him? Amstrad. Jeez, I've just forgotten his name.
Alan Sugar.
Alan Sugar, jeez.
Sir, Lord.
Yeah, so whatever hierarchy is that nowadays. Yeah. But they follow the numbers, and then you can get creative once you got the core fundamentals. I think is a great way to be. It's very strong. Just conscious of time a wee bit, so a couple of things we're going to ask you. Guilty pleasure?
Glass of wine, I guess. A bottle.
On the boat or off the boat? Where would you be?
My favorite would be either a cool bottle of beer or a cool glass of wine, sailing along with a beautiful sunset, and just hearing the only sound is the lapping of the water against the hull of the boat.
Red wine, white wine?
Red wine with steak, white wine if I'm just sitting there appreciating the view. Yeah.
Wow. Look at that. That's a smile and a half there, Just in terms of heroes and inspirational people, who really stands out for you in your life?
Evidently, by the amount of times I mentioned him, my dad's been a massive influence. So he's really stood out. Tony Robbins was for many people across the planet has been a phenomenal phenomenal influence. And one of the things is really, I started to follow Tony Robbins in like 92. I was on his fire team for his first UPW in the NEC in Birmingham, his first UK UPW. To see how he continually grown, he's never got stale. He's just continually improved and grown, and he's still amazing at 60. That's been a phenomenal inspiration to me. So yeah, I always think those two people have stood out.
So tell us what is your fire in the belly then?
I love the way you did that. So it's back to where the fire in the belly is to help people have a better existence, a better experience of in business, not just existing, but thriving in business, not just surviving, but thriving. And I've gone through that journey myself, and I'm now committed to thriving, and that's a decision. And I want to share that with so many people. And that's what gives me the fire in the belly, and also to be able to pass on some of the gifts that from mindset that I had was passed to me or by my dad. I want to pass that on to my boys too.
That's awesome. So tell us, how can people reach out to you? Where can they get a hold of you, get a hold of the book?
Great. So they just go to www.surviveandthrive.cc. That's surviveandthrive.cc. And then you'll be able to get yourself a free copy of the book there. I cover the cost of the book. All I just ask is you to cover the cost of shipping and handling. And you'll find out more about me there. You want to check out my podcast. It's the Business Mastermind podcast. And Pete and I both share a passion of podcasting and use the same podcasting agency, which we're both great fans of. So the Business Mastermind podcast. And then so thirdly, check out gavinpreston.com.
Awesome. Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing and being so open.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.